know, if he was in sustainability for another corporation, he'd probably make more money, but he enjoys
Right.
it.
Wouldn't have as much.
It's much fun.
We'll call the meeting to order, special meeting of the Regional Planning Commission. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the committee? Hearing none, seeing none. Move on to election of chairperson. Commissioner
Make a
Patel.
motion that Drake should be chairman of our committee.
All right. Commissioner Patel nominates David Drake. Are there any other nominations?
Second that nomination.
I'll second that.
And nominations will be closed. All in favor of David Drake for chair?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Aye.
carried.
Opposed. I'm just kidding.
Don't be stealing my pen, right?
Yes, you have. How are you, sir? Good. How you doing? Doing fine. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I think we want to try to move, it's not that much on it, but I think we want to get done by 5:15 before everybody kind of shows up, hopefully. We need election of vice chair. Can I hear a nomination? I would nominate Bhupen Patel for vice chair. This is Dimple Desai.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all set. Next, approval of meeting minutes of November 29, 2005. I'm not exactly- I think we're pretty limited here who we do it, but I guess we can vote yes or no. If anybody I wants. approve.
You have to
and-
abstain
and it
unless
is
you were
written.
there, so the adoption.
I'm not sure if you have to abstain. I think you can still approve them, right, John?
Right.
Right, so anybody can,
Well, you should. you know,
probably shouldn't though.
You can't.
How do you want to do it? Do we want to vote then? Can we have a vote on that, on approval?
So moved.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the next item, which, probably the most important thing here tonight is the, section 13, which I asked, to put it on, in the package for everybody. I asked John to kind of review it a little bit because it really kind of limits us what we can do, especially the fourth one. So John, if you could take, not too long, like a half a minute each, and go through what we can actually do.
This is John Myrtle. So the Commission on Regional Planning is actually one of the committees or commissions that's from the charter. It, Chapter 13 lists out the powers of the commission. And to kind of, I guess, give some context, when the MDC was created in 1929, the charter included a wide range of powers for a regional entity. And this Commission on Regional Planning, it starts off by explaining that part of the jurisdiction of the committee relates to the location of any public building, bridge, esplanade, boulevard, concourse, street, highway, or square within the district. Some of this language, in this section and then also in the charter about the regional entity, it seems to take the flavor of kind of a planning and zoning commission. It talks about setting distances between buildings, veranda lines, things like that. And then the other identified areas are maps of the district. Section 3-2 talks about those powers about different buildings and whatnot. And also says this commission has the power of public works projects which are not expressly within the province of other boards or bureaus or commissions. So that seems to be a reference to basically public works projects that would fall under the Water Bureau on the drinking water side or public works on the sewer side. So the regional planning body was, again, the kind of other regional powers about buildings and esplanades and that kind of stuff. It also identifies the creation of maps regarding new public buildings, bridges, streets, or concourses. There's other sections in the charter which talks about the district's power over highways. And it, again, talks about either roads turned over by the member municipalities or streets that cross from one municipality into the other. Section 13-4 is about the commission's powers with respect to land. And again, it's in the, under the umbrella of the building of esplanades, bridges, concourses, streets, and highways. And then the last section, Section 13-5, talks about approval of maps by the commission, and it basically says that no map or plan will be recorded with any clerks of the town court, any clerks of the towns of the district, unless this commission basically approves it. And it's related to, again, those buildings of esplanades, highways, streets, things like that. I don't know the full history of this committee. If you saw the 2005 minutes, the kind of last subject that was brought here was riverfront recapture. But this kind of planning and zoning aspect, I know I've seen very early minutes, there were requests to kind of exercise these powers about highways, and this is, I'm talking like 1929, 1930 minutes. And I admittedly, I don't know if it ever came to fruition, but that's kind of, in a nutshell, the kind of general powers
Just make, let me just make one comment, then I'll go to you. I had called John on this just because I wanted to kind of educate it. 13.5 is like a huge deal, and he says we just ignore it, which anybody can ask Chris or anybody wants to pick it up, why we, and I think we probably should, but that would be a huge deal if we follow 13.5. It's basically every town that has a change in a road,
Yeah,
you have to come to us for approval, which I think is probably a little bit out of hand,
we gotta go back to, what you have in front of you is what we call our compiled charter, which basically takes the special act from 1929, as it may have been amended, and it has been amended since then, and then takes the original plus any amendments over time and compiles them, i.e. the compiled charter, into a working, usable, more usable document than if one had to go from 1929 and then research all the amendments to the charter since then. So this provides a nice, easy reference source for what the district can do. What is our authority to do it? Many of from the 1929 charter, there are several things within that enabling statute, special act, excuse me, that laid out certain authority by choice of the member towns then, but authority of the NBC to do certain things. Within this section 13, or chapter 13, excuse me, of the compiled charter, you see some of those, the items that the legislature in their wisdom gave the NBC authority to do, but that we don't do because it wasn't part of the asks from the then original Bill, when you were here. Was it 4 member towns that were? Just one? City of Hartford was, yeah, maybe it was just City of Hartford. So unless the commission, the member towns at the time made a request of the NBC to exercise all these powers, we don't exercise those powers that were not requested of or turned over by a member town. So for example, you'll see in the actual charter provision, we should probably circulate that special act, John, because it provides a little, the flavor for what I'm talking about. In that document, it talks about things like the role of the Hartford City Council, the role of the Hartford Public Works Department, Department of Engineering, is actually turning over not only duties and functions, but also personnel to the NDC to take over the sewage system within the city of Hartford. And there was a resolution from the city council at the time directing the NBC to exercise that authority, both on the sewer side and on the water side. The items that are set forth, with one notable exception, but in sections 2, 3, and 5, are amongst those types of powers that, unless the member towns direct you to exercise them, they're going to retain the jurisdiction to do so, to regulate as it's set forth here. So, for example, every one of our 8 member towns has a planning and zoning commission. Some have a planning commission and a zoning commission. Some have a planning and zoning commission, but regardless, they have land use regulatory bodies. They control all the things that John was talking about in terms of building setbacks, veranda lines, location of public streets, location of public buildings, all controlled by the local land use authority or authorities, not by the MDC. Even though we have the power to do it, we haven't been authorized or asked to do it. So one exception to that is number 4, powers with respect to land. There are some properties that we may purchase that fall into that category, and those should come to the Regional Planning Commission as part of a regulatory process. I don't know if they, honestly, I can't tell you whether they have in the past. You've acted oftentimes on real property and acted as a body of the whole without referral to the Regional Planning Commission. But of all the powers that are set forth therein, that's one that's not really contingent upon action by a member town or a group of member towns, and can be exercised absent any action by the member towns. It's confusing, to say the least. There's other authorities in the 1929 charter that talk about garbage pickup. Well, we don't do garbage pickup. We did amend our charter to allow us to enter into a contract directly with CRRA back in whenever it was, 80-something. But we needed a special act and change to our charter to do that because we weren't asked by the member towns to provide that function. And since then, we haven't been asked by the member towns to provide that function. So that's another example of something that we're authorized to do, but not enabled to do, not directed to do. And that's because we were searching. I know the chairman had asked John and I to look into what is the role of this committee, and it's also I think that may be general policy, John, but I think also regional planning can do whatever the board directs them to do. So there's this plus there's whatever the board should otherwise direct them to get involved in.
So, don't exercise unless we're asked. That's basically what it.
That's, in effect, yeah, that's correct. For most things, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, for most things except, again, number 4, 13-4, that doesn't necessarily, that involves land purchases by the NDC within the jurisdictional boundaries of the NDC, which is the outline of our 8-member towns.
Anybody have any comments? Yeah. Commissioner Salami?
Sure, so, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, one of the things that, certainly in the past, we did look at various different opportunities for the MDC to regionalize certain activities and thereby create some advantages, in economies of scale to provide certain things to all the towns. And you could, we actually looked at these things, and our former chair, Commissioner Bello, I'm sure will remember. But even the purchase of electricity, you could pull all 8 towns together and say, we're going to purchase our electricity together through the MDC or whatever. And, we haven't done that, but, we did talk about it. But certainly with the consent of the district towns, and we could look at something like, for instance, we attempted to in the past was create a stormwater management plan that's a regional plan, and that would certainly benefit the towns on the west side of the river, East Hartford, my town, not connected to that. But there are a number of services that you could provide that are actual physical operating services, like catch basin cleaning and repair. We could be doing that everywhere if we, or engineering design for our engineering department could work with the town's engineering department. But certainly for the towns of our city of Hartford and Weathersfield, Newington, West Hartford, Windsor, I'm not sure about Bloomfield, but maybe Bloomfield too, where stormwater flows naturally from those towns into other towns, either from Weathersfield to Hartford or West Hartford to Hartford, or there could be, maybe Rocky Hill doesn't have the same issue, but certainly, the idea of creating a sort of a master regional stormwater management plan could be an advantage. Stormwater management plans end at the town line. That's kind of a little bit absurd, but, we could certainly help with that. And we've tried to do, to sort of invite the towns, but I think that with their consent, if we asked them, that would certainly be an opportunity for us to do. And then the other thing that I know we've asked in the past, because I actually worked for the town of East Hartford a long time ago, before I was a commissioner here. And when we created and executed all the stuff for our GIS system, which is more than just mapping, it's a database that collects and manages data within a mapping system. That's also something that we offer to get all the towns together on, but that hasn't really happened either. I mean, each town has either the assessor or the engineer or somebody has a GIS mapping system, in the town that they use. Certainly, all the information from all the maps could be put together in one map, and everybody could share it, not only the mapping, but the data. And, sort of looking down the road and the issues that we've had with stormwater, that it seems like an appropriate topic for us to at least invite the towns. And I think the makeup of this committee has to have somebody from each of the towns. Am I correct about that? Or does it say that you have to have people from each town? No, there's one of them that does. That's not regional plan, but one of the committee.
TPI.
So anyway, I think that there's an opportunity for us to do that, and particularly with stormwater management. And I know that we tried when we first heard about the MS4 regulations that were on their way to not only us, but all the towns with respect to stormwater control and management, that we tried at that point to at least invite the towns to do this. And I know we got as far as we wanted to, but with the recent issues in the north end of Hartford especially, but elsewhere, the tunnel, and I think it would be appropriate for us to at least look at that. And I would suggest that, I can do this now or I can do it after, but I would suggest that a future agenda item for this committee could be a demonstration of the GIS system, and, not just the mapping, but all the how the data in the system is used. There are the MDC. I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding in the demonstrations that I've seen in the past, and that's just a long time ago, that we add data to it. For instance, if there's I'll just take a simple example, like a fire hydrant, and you can find that fire hydrant on the map. And you can actually click on that hydrant and get a whole bunch of information about it. Last time it was repaired, or where the valve for it is, so forth. And, I had some experience in this working for New York City, and they use their GIS system to manage all of their infrastructure. And you imagine the kind of infrastructure they have there. But I think that our mapping is certainly capable of doing that. It was, with that information. And I think when you think about the kind of information that's present in our mapping and in the mapping of the towns with respect to stormwater and other issues, that this committee could really help pull the 8-member towns together to provide a management plan that makes sense across the entire district, and where important information is shared, among the towns. So that's, I would make that motion that if, that at some point in the future that we get a demonstration from the staff on the mapping and the database embedded in the mapping, so that members of this committee can see actually the power of that system.
Want to see if we can get something together for next meeting, whatever that would be? put.
Yeah, I'm
put-
suggesting
okay, I'm
that,
with
you
I
know,
just-
future
yeah.
agenda item
Yeah,
for,
no,
for
okay.
this commission
Yeah, I
should
agree
be,
with you.
you know,
Yeah.
a demonstration on the mapping, I think, so everybody can see it. I sometimes forget, Mr. Chairman, that I've been here a long time, and I've seen these things, and probably you and maybe most of the commissioners here, you know, aside from maybe Commissioner Hoffman and Commissioner DeBella, may have never seen this system, you know.
I'll talk to Donna Scott. We just, you know, we had put together a list of about 8 things, and the stormwater management was on it, and a bunch of things. It was already, and after talking with Don and Chris, we've kind of, they're reviewing themselves internally before they send it back to us, so we
Sure.
brought it down to basically the mapping. But I agree with you 100%. All that stuff is something we should look at. It's like, we're at the
Well,
beginning.
I think that would be the first thing that you'd have
Yeah.
to, you'd have to
I
at
agree with
least
you.
see the power that we have, you know, to do some of these
Yeah.
things, the ability that
You know,
we
I'll
have.
talk to Don and Scott about it, see if we could set something like that up if it's available. I agree. And this, again, we had a list and they said, basically went through it, what they think we can do, not do, and Don had some things he's working on himself before it came to us, so what you talked about was on that list, so. we just-
One of the things that goes back pretty far, and Bill, maybe you can just talk about this, is when UConn built the Dempsey Hospital and the whole facility in Farmington, that, you know, the MDC had to supply water, and we had to change it again years later, I think around 2005 or something. I remember I was, you know, yeah. And so we're supplying, you know, some of the services that we do outside of our outside the district. So it became a regional planning issue, you know, and with respect to the Farmington River Valley and the wild and scenic thing, I mean, all these things became regional issues where, you know, the MDC would get involved and derives its power or authority to do that through the charter you just heard, you know, so. But I think that looking down the road, we ought to, you know, the basis for everything we do would be somewhere associated with the mapping at some point. So it'd be good for us to see that, a demonstration of it.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I think in the past, in some areas, MDC failed to exercise this power. For example, when they were rerouting 91 and dig out our tunnel, that should have been the first thing MDC could have said, hey, wait a minute, that's a regional issue. We want to say where it goes, how it affects us. And I think it was not known to anybody that MDC had a power and they could do anything. Probably we would have lost with state decision, whatever they did, but still it had the power to do that. And we didn't do it. And I think based on what happened at the time, now we realize that the dike and the way it was constructed without MDC's input is a disaster for the future to come, and we have to deal with in the future. Second thing was, all my years in city, MDC maps were the key to everything. And I'm not sure Mr. President can answer how up to date we are, how much we are spending time to keep it up to date, and where are we on it. So that is an internal function. Any town can benefit from it, and also anybody who's looking at doing anything can look at it. Just what was mentioned about fire hydrant. Can you tell me, sir? Yeah.
If I,
We were gonna do that maps
Okay.
next, so we'll, you know, let's
All
just
right.
do it. We'll just do it once. Yeah. Okay, we get it, yeah. Okay, any, Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Curry, excuse me, I've asked Scott to make a presentation later this month, I think. The time's moving fast, on looking at the possibility of developing a regional stormwater authority. And that meeting is going to be with, hopefully with town managers, mayors, town elected officials, all of the MDC. And it's possible that this conversation with GIS mapping may become part of that conversation, depending on which way it goes and where the towns are. Just something to keep in mind. I'd also say that based on our most recent past practice, I'm hoping our next meeting is not in 2043.
Anybody else at this point? Again, we had it on our list, he took it off because of that, so I think it's a good idea, so, yeah. Mapping. You want to just
Sure.
briefly say where we are, what we
Very
should, and then maybe you
briefly.
and I will talk afterwards if we can.
Yes, if,
Do a
and,
presentation of some sort.
you know, we are, you know, if you remember the presentation that we gave on the management study, one of those presentations was a detailed presentation on GIS and how we have evolved, you know, well beyond 2005. Not only has the GIS system evolved, but the way in which we use it has evolved. And we just had a presentation here the other night where we had staff from operations showing how they used actual GIS equipment in the field to record the actual location of anything of our infrastructure in the field, either when we repair it or when we build it. So we're not just using the GIS equipment upstairs on the second floor. We're using it in the field, and that automatically populates SAP, which populates GIS. So we will give a presentation, a full presentation, not just on what GIS is doing upstairs, but how we've integrated the GIS team with the operational departments and how that information is recorded. We always talk about how we do more with less. You know, I said this the other night, is that the old way of doing things was you had one person who drew something on a Mylar document, and that was an engineer, and it got marked up and sent to the MDC, and over months that would land on the GIS staffs, and they would implement that as-built drawing into GIS. It's completely different now. In repair in the middle of the night, when we repair a water main or a hydrant or anything, we used to draw it up on a little Dunkin' Donut napkin, and it would go over to Mark Randall, I think, was there, and Mark Randall would. He was a drafter, and he drafted nice enough to it could be sent up to engineering. Engineering drafting would touch it, then it would come up, and they would do a better detailed drafting, and then giving it to GIS. Then you'd have to send somebody out in the field to verify it, right? So all of those steps that we used to do, in 2006, the backlog in GIS was 10 years. Now we're not even close to where, you know, the team is working together. So we'll give a nice presentation, talk about all the components.
Can you also see if we're short anything?
Sure,
Is there
absolutely.
another step we should look at?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And Bob can talk about, Bob's worked a lot with the towns and getting the towns and the GIS departments working groups together to collaborate. And so there's a lot of hard, good work that's been done since 2005. But
Isn't that mostly on digital? You use the digital
Yes.
system.
Yes.
That's what Bob's doing.
Yeah, we had a,
They changed it. You
well,
used to had draftsmen doing it.
we had a cartography department. We had guys with job titles of cartographer, I think. So that did the mapping department. And like Scott says, we probably had 3 or 4 of those guys at one point that we don't really need them at this point, you know.
Mr. Chairman, as our chairman suggested, that we should get the town's input. Because what is happening, when I was at city years ago, we used to have a survey division, which was mapping things, coordinating things with MDC, and that function is totally gone. There is no surveyor in the city of Hartford anymore. So we should get together with town managers, etc., ask them that in order to do this function, they have to designate somebody to work with our staff and keep going, so everything what we do is more accurate and not guesswork.
If I may,
Yeah,
Mr.
go
Chairman.
ahead, yeah.
Yes, Scott Jellison. So, thank you. And we spend a lot of time, Commissioner. Back when I first got here in 2006, we developed a paving coordination program. And it's much more sophisticated than it ever has been. And we have individuals that work solely all year long. All those staff do, engineering staff do, is coordinate with the paving programs of our towns. So, and construction and DOT as well. So, and to Commissioner Curry's point, we have already notified town managers and officials of a meeting to talk about Stormwater Authority. We're just having a difficult time. We're trying to fit it in the last week of March, and that's not working. So we're going to hopefully shoot for the first week of April. And remember, we are going to be doing it's in my presentation tonight, or my notes tonight for the board meeting, but we are meeting with the towns and town engineers to give a presentation on the Water Master Plan. So that is March 26th at 9 a.m. Down at the training center. So everyone is welcome to that. So I'll be talking about that tonight as well.
I was just thinking, maybe we could be a master center for maps for all towns. I know my town still uses Mylars, which is
Yeah.
beyond me, but I think there's laws about it, but.
Yeah, the
But,
towns
yeah.
do, and Scott Chelson, the towns do. We're very supportive of our towns, and so we'll go through a full detail presentation and show you how the system is working today.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, good. Hey, just one last question. This fuel cell thing we talked about last meeting at the water, should that have gone through this committee based on the location, all that stuff, or not really?
Yeah.
I'm just, okay. No, I'm just thinking, I
It's a
just,
perfect
I
example.
don't know, it seems like a lot of extra work, but I don't know. Okay, that's something we could talk about. I just kinda,
Well, it's on the board's agenda tonight, you can always refer it out if you
I don't wanna open that up. I was reading, I was thinking about it, I said, geez, it should have been on it, but anyways, okay,
Well, that was the question I had for district council later
okay.
between meetings. I'm not sure.
Don?
Yeah, so this is similar to an 8-24 that the town planning and zonings use to review projects,
Yeah.
to see if there's any conflicts or anything like that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anything else? Anybody? Okay. Opportunity for general public comments? I hear none. Future go ahead. Who's that? I can't see it.
Oh, yeah. Hi, this is Mary, Rickle Pelletier. And can you see me? Is my
Yep, you're
video
good.
working? Oh, good. I just wanted to say, I just happened into this meeting, somebody mentioned it, and I happen to have the time, but I'm a resident of Hartford, live at 80 Elizabeth Street, and I participated in the MDC Citizens Advisory Committee to the long-term control plan from 2005 to 2014. And I'm also the founding director of Park Watershed, a 501c3 for the Park River Regional Watershed, which advocates for the improvement of landscapes around especially our riparian zones. And so I'm mostly focused on the design issues above ground. And, you know, for many years, I've heard that MDC is really focused on everything below ground. So this is a really eye-opening opportunity, I think, for the MDC, especially because there is a possibility to create a regional stormwater authority. And I think the MDC, it would behoove the MDC to do that, because I have watched so many municipal planning and zoning commissions that are either unwilling or unable to stop high density development that's really sending problematic flooding into downstream, especially urban neighborhoods. And I could cite those locations such as Kopaka Plaza, projects in, of course, even the eastern half of Farmington, the whole area around the Yukon medical center, you know, and I'm not against high density development, but there's a need to understand the relationship of the hydrology, which MDC has to know, and high density development. And that just has to happen at a regional level, a watershed level. And of course, because the MDC system is largely a gravity system, that's important. So thank you for bringing this up. And in closing, I'd like to mention that I'm also have my on some of the discussions that are going on around I-84 and the redevelopment of I-84. And I have repeatedly asked the team to show, to describe what they're planning to do with the conduit. And if I remember correctly, at one point in time, the MDC was actually willing to take over the conduit, but they realized that its design life is somewhat deteriorated and they didn't necessarily want to own it. But the proposals from the transportation planning teams is to saw off the top of I-84 and leave the conduit. And that is the answer. Kevin Burnham, of course, is at DOT now. I highly recommend that the MDC look into that, because it's just hard for me to believe that that it is structurally sound to saw off the top of I-84, which is integral to the conduit. And I think of all the stakeholders, the MDC may be the most capable of addressing those issues. So again, you know, good luck with your work, and I hope that you keep in mind that we hope to see green infrastructure. The opportunity for these regional stormwater authorities was ideally to raise money for green infrastructure and to.
Thank you. We need to wrap up. I apologize, but that's where.
No, that's it.
Okay.
That's it. So thank you.
Thank you. Guess there's nobody else. And a request for future agenda items. If anybody has anything, please send it to me or Don, and we can add it. But I'm kind of thinking this stormwater thing with you will pick up, and we'll have some things added once you come to peace with the towns and the mapping, what we're looking to do, so.
Okay, just give it time to run its
Give it
course
time.
before it goes
I agree.
anywhere else.
Anybody else? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.